All right. Again, so back to the bureaucracy. Rulemaking. What you need to understand about quasi-legislative, and we should add in quasi-judicial powers. So, for example, essentially, the bureaucracy is part of the executive branch. However, you will notice that they make rules, as you guys read about with cheese holes and other wonderful regulations. This, we call it quasi-legislative because they're making rules which are much like laws. Alright? And then when my dad worked for the Federal Trade Commission, when he sued Kraft or all these other companies, essentially a lot of these cases were done in front of the commissioners or through judges through the Federal Trade Commission, which means that they had quasi-judicial powers as well. So what the bureaucracy is doing is it's avoiding separation of powers. You have an executive branch. You have basically a bureaucracy like a Federal Trade Commission, which is making rules, which is like lawmaking. It is enforcing the rules, which is like the executive branch. In fact, it's part of the executive branch. And then it is judging the rules as well. It's interpreting the law, and it thus has quasi-judicial powers as well. So this ends up being incredibly powerful. It's cause for some controversy. It causes a lot of anger. Republicans get really frustrated with for example, the EPA, because they were trying to do recently was create laws to start regulating carbon dioxide. Well, when the EPA was created, carbon dioxide was never considered to be a poison, something that needed to be regulated. Today we argue about greenhouse gases and that carbon dioxide is one. But so they basically threatened to cut the EPA's funding. And so the EPA is waiting till Congress decides what should be done about carbon dioxide, whether it should be regulated or not. So there's always, kind of this tension between the two. And again, of course, the president is able to appoint and remove heads of agencies, departments, and corporations. You'll notice that, of course, independent regulatory agencies, or commissions rather, are not mentioned here because he cannot remove them. And again, this is talking about like this whole appointing process is very difficult, because if there's divided government and the Senate is not of the same party as the president, there's a lot of disagreement about who should be a nominee. Should it be someone who's more liberal? Should it be someone who's more conservative? So they argue about that, and the president has to make deals. Let's see. The president can also suggest reorganizing departments and agencies. For example, the president suggested the creation of Homeland Security, but that requires the approval of Congress. The president is also able to issue executive orders to order essentially the government to do something, because he's in charge of the federal bureaucracy. So he can issue an edict, like an order to the EPA to investigate mercury poisoning in New Hampshire or wherever. Meanwhile, the Congress can abolish programs and approve them. It could even abolish a bureaucracy. They could vote to end the EPA if they're that upset about it. They approve officials, and that again is why that ties into essentially making a deal. How does the president get around that? Obviously, the president can make what is called a recess appointment. A recess appointment is when you appoint someone when they are out of session or on recess, and then they serve for a period of time, usually until the next congressional election or so. But the problem is you're not having continuity, because you have someone who serves for 8 months, and then all of a sudden they get booted and they have to get a new job. And of course, the president can also appeal to the people and talk about how great so-and-so is and why they need to be. And it's like the president using the bully pulpit. So the Senate, while it approves officials, there's this constant negotiation between the president and Senate. Oversight of executive agencies, we've talked about that in the congressional unit. except, for example, the Government Accountability Office audits the different agencies and departments. And of course, they have the power of money. They fund the executive branch. They can withhold funds if they're really frustrated. And so often, bureaucracy wants to fall into line, hence the iron triangle. And finally, the judiciary. They rule on the constitutionality of acts and regulations and executive orders. So that means that the judiciary can say that an executive order of the president is unconstitutional, an executive agreement of the president is unconstitutional, that the regulations that the bureaucracy has issued are unconstitutional. And so the judiciary gets involved at different times. Anyway, at this stage, I hope you've written questions down that you want to ask, because Mr. Bergeli will be coming in shortly, and he can answer all of your questions. After that, he will have an activity for you guys to do. Anyway, so I'll see you guys on Tuesday. Have a great day. That will be our review session. You might want to consider coming. Have a great day.